The diagram on the left shows a colony of prokaryotes responding to each other's signals and using products from their neighbors. The diagram on the right shows differential gene expression and signaling in a multicellular eukaryote. In the colony of individuals, each individual is technically its own organism, but colonial living has selected for each individual having a specialized task. This is a colony of nostoc, which is a kind of bacteria. In the colony there are photosynthetic cells, which make sugars, and there are nitrogen-fixing cells, which turn gaseous nitrogen into nitrogen compounds that can be used by the photosynthetic cells and the nitrogen-fixing cells. The nitrogen-fixing cells get sugar from the photosynthetic cells, while NH3, the product of nitrogen fixing, is given to the photosynthetic cells by the nitrogen-fixing cells. This picture on the right is two different kinds of cells in a multicellular organism. We see that there are signal receptors, there are signal molecules, and we can see that each cell is telling the other cell to make certain genes into proteins and not make certain other genes into proteins. This outside layer of cells is building pigments that protect the organism from ultraviolet light, while the cell to the interior is not making the pigments required to protect the cells from ultraviolet light, and in fact is sending signals to the cells on the exterior membrane, telling them to make the pigments. So we see that in a colony of individuals, each cell has a specialized task. In a multicellular organism, each cell has a specialized task. In a colony of individuals, the genetic similarity, especially in a bacteria, is pretty high. They're basically clones, where 1 in every 10,000 cells is different genetically from its neighbors. But really we have two entirely different kinds of cells with two entirely different sets of genes. In the multicellular organism, every single cell has the same genes, but not every single cell is expressing the same genes. This would be a difference between cells in a multicellular organism and cells in a colony. Despite this slight difference, most everything else is the same. So if your answer proposed that a group of colonial single-celled individuals shared their DNA and became a multicellular individual with differential gene expression, then we might imagine in certain environments that this would be advantageous and this population might survive to reproduce more often. They would have to stay together all the time as now a single organism, and the population might change locally into one that was multicellular instead of colonial over time. There are clear advantages to being a multicellular organism with cells that have specialized tasks. That is certain. All plants and animals are multicellular organisms. Many fungi are multicellular organisms, though not all of them are. So fungi, plants, and animals have evolved from this evolutionary novelty where colony perhaps evolved into a multicellular organism.